welcome to another episode of the Digitally Overwhelmed podcast. I'm Cynthia Pacheco, your host, and I run Digital Bloom IQ, where I help health and wellness businesses get found in Google and heal more of the world. This is episode 217 of the podcast. And in this episode, I'm going to be running through this question: should I migrate to the new version of Google Analytics, or as it's called, GA4? And right off the bat, I want to say yes, absolutely. You want to set this up as soon as possible. There's a bunch of new reporting, there's a bunch of new features. And my intention with this episode is to give you an executive overview. So this isn't going to be a technical episode, but an executive overview of what GA4 has to offer, what things you want to consider, and what direction Google Analytics is going. So I hope that you walk away with a little bit of technical knowledge here, but mostly an idea of what the goal of GA4 is. And at the end of the episode, I'm actually going to be doing a little bit of a walkthrough, so stay tuned. And if you're listening to the audio version of this episode, definitely click through to the show notes, because you'll be able to see some of the stuff on my screen. So what is GA4? GA4 is a new version of Google Analytics. It's actually been around for a little bit, and this is totally normal. So Google Analytics and Google in general, they're always updating and optimizing and improving their tools. And right off the bat, I want to say that Google Analytics, so the universal analytics version of Google Analytics, which is the one that comes before this one, isn't going away anytime soon. So don't panic if you don't have time, or if you're not really excited about migrating to GA4. You still have time to learn. And also what I recommend and what I've been doing with my clients is to actually have both versions for now. And, at some point they will probably sunset the other tool, but it's not going to happen anytime soon, just because we have been using this other version for so long, and it's quite different, right? So the first thing I want to talk about are some of the biggest differences between these two tools. And then I'm going to talk about some benefits of GA4 and some things to look forward to, which there are tons. And then the last thing, like I said, I'm going to walk through just a quick walkthrough of maybe how to migrate, and also just some cool reporting to consider. So I think one of the biggest changes that I'm seeing in GA4 is that the focus isn't as much on page views, but instead on events and how visitors are taking action on your website. So when we previously thought about web analytics and web analytics tools, we're thinking about how pages are loading, how people are clicking from one page to another. And more, we're moving towards tracking actions. So how visitors and our clients, our potential ideal clients that are hanging out on our website, how they're taking action on our website by clicking on certain things. So inside of GA4, we no longer have a hit or a packet of data that is sent as a page view. All we have are what we call events. So we still do get something like a page view, but the way that the data gets sent is through events. And so this is a huge just change. And I think it makes a lot of sense, because the truth is page views are, and I've said this for a long time, page views are kind of a vanity metric. Like, obviously we want to see which pages people are spending time on and that sort of thing, but it doesn't really give us a full picture of what the visitor is doing on these specific pages. So there are a few different types of events, and Google gives us a lot of control over the different events. So we've got automatically collected events like the page view, like first visits, like when the session starts. We also have some recommended events depending on what type of website you have. Google Analytics will actually recommend events to set up. And we've got custom events that we can set up as well. And there's also some enhanced measurement events like scrolls, outbound links, site search, and video engagement. So the cool thing is it's so much easier to set this up. Before you need to have a web developer or coding language knowledge in order to set this up. And now it's kind of out of the box. It's just a matter of clicking through some things and automatically turning things on. So that's really, really cool. And that's really, really powerful. So that's the first big change. And if you're confused by that, don't worry. Once you start to get into the tool, and there is quite a big difference in some of the interface I'm going to show you, you're going to start to get used to this idea of events, and that's totally fine. How Google Analytics 4 and the Universal Analytics tracked sessions is a little bit different. So in the Universal Analytics, a session was multiple page views or events that happened within either a 30-minute time. So if someone got onto your website, clicked around, and then was inactive for 30 minutes, then that's where the session or the visit would get cut off. However, in Google Analytics 4, we have this new event, automatic event called Session Start. And that is the duration of the session or the visit is based on that event. So it is a complete difference with how we think about sessions. And this is going to really show up in the reporting. It's going to really, be very, very evident. Another really cool difference is that with Google Analytics 4, Google Analytics gives us the opportunity to connect and back up our data. So more and more, we are having this opportunity to take control of our data and to actually kind of back it up, right? So GA4 gives us free connection to a tool called BigQuery, which was only previously available in the paid version of Google Analytics, Universal Analytics, called GA360. So now BigQuery is free, and I highly recommend setting this up sooner rather than later because it could change. But basically, it allows us to store large and complex data sets. And so then we can go back and analyze data from the past because basically Google Analytics will give us an option to back up a certain amount of data, but then after that, it kind of wipes the data from their end. And so something like BigQuery allows us to, again, look at data from the past to compare year over year. And this is a really important setup for us to keep take into consideration. So a couple benefits, I've already talked a little bit about them. So the first thing is event tracking setup is easier. So things like scrolls, page views, outbound links, site search, video engagement, and file downloads. These used to be things, not the page views, but the other ones used to be things that we needed a web developer. And now we can just automatically set them up. It's kind of just, I'll show you guys, like you just literally just like check something and it's done. The other cool thing that kind of gets extended with this idea of easy conversion and event tracking is that you can do your own custom event tracking. So if you're tracking things like newsletter signups or downloads, or basically you could track any button that gets clicked. It's a lot easier to do this with Google Analytics 4. You still, in most cases, need Google Tag Manager, but it's so much easier. It used to be much more complex and just much more kind of techy. The other cool thing is the Google Analytics 4 interface is much more user-centric. So that means that we've got buckets of reporting that are more for analysis from a business owner side. So things like acquisition, engagement, monetization, and retention. Those are the new areas of reporting versus universal analytics, where we had audience acquisition, behavior, conversion. Those were much more web analytics terms. And so now we can see that Google Analytics is trying to cater to the business owner, which is great news for small businesses, if you tell me. And kind of adding on to that, we've got some enhanced data visualizations and reporting in Google Analytics 4, which looks so cool. Some really great real-time reports. I'm going to be showing you guys that in a second. And then a couple last things. So GA4 does have some predictive analytics capabilities. And so what that means is that they've incorporated metrics that are taken from machine learning algorithms. And so things like purchase probability, churn probability, revenue prediction, really powerful stuff, right? Again, control over data, ownership over data. More and more, we're going to see this. And then the last thing is easy cross-domain tracking. So if you've got multiple domains, this used to be a nightmare, to set up, especially as a small business, tracking it and testing it. Now there's a settings area in GA4 where you literally just add your domains and it's done. All right, let me share my screen. I'm going to show you guys a little bit from my end. So this is the Universal Analytics. This is the previous current version. So I don't recommend deleting this or anything. We want to keep this on until we absolutely have to, because there's still lots of great reporting here. And it's good to, have both. But if you don't have Google Analytics 4 set up yet, what you can do is you can go to the admin area and you're going to see the setting that says GA4 setup. I've already have my setup here, but here basically you're going to have the opportunity to easily connect your GA4 account. It's literally 2-3 clicks and then you're done. And that's, Google has made it really easy for us to set that up. So once you've got it set up, usually takes 24 to 48 hours to collect data. So don't freak out if you don't immediately see any data. That's totally normal. But this is what Google Analytics 4 looks like. So already we can see a very different interface. It's a little bit, it's completely different. This is the real-time reporting. We've got some nice maps. There's my own visit. There's someone in Africa too. So I invite you to just click around. I wanted to show you also in here, we've got the different event tracking. So if I go to data streams here under the property, I'll see here my main Digital Bloom IQ data stream. And so here, these are the enhanced measurements I was talking about. So I'm automatically capturing these, which is really cool. The cross-domain tracking is down here. So again, if you have several domains, you can add them here. You can also define internal traffic. So I don't have this set up yet, but I can grab my IP address. If I, for my team as well, I can add all the IP addresses that I want to exclude from the data, just so that I'm not capturing my own visits. In some cases, that can be really helpful. So yeah, there's definitely some very powerful settings here that we want to keep track of. And in terms of the reporting, like I mentioned, the organization of the reporting is a little bit different. So we've got acquisition, which is sort of similar to the previous acquisition. So here we're really looking at where visitors are coming from. So you can see here, there's no page views, no page views. I'm sure some of you are freaking out right now. But I can see, where my traffic is coming from in the last week or so. I can also see this based on visitor specific. So it's very, very much, it's more focused on person, on visitor, I should say, because it could be, two people looking at the same computer, but versus before it was all about page views. So we're moving away from this page view idea. Although here we do see traffic acquisition, and we still do have some session metrics. So I think Google is weaning us off of the session, but it is, yeah, we still have a little bit of that information. These are similar, engaged sessions. That's really interesting. If I scroll over, I can see definition of metrics here. So average engagement time per session. This is great. I think this is really useful. Then we've got engagement. So this is a completely new area of reporting, which would have been kind of like the conversion area of the reporting. But really the idea is that we want to see, we want to make sure that people are actually engaging on our website. That shows a completely different interpretation of our website. User stickiness, that is so cool. And so here, when I set up custom events, I haven't done this for myself yet, but I can start to track, the people who maybe download my newsletter, or they sign up for a specific opt-in, or they purchase my course, my SEO course. So I can start to track that information through here. And I can also track back the return on investment. I haven't set this up yet, but I would be able to see, potentially for my SEO course, the return on just different visitor metrics and that sort of thing. So you can see that the reporting is quite different. And that's one of the reasons I recommend setting this up sooner rather than later, because you can start to get acclimatized to the data, start to just warm up to the different reports, and to start to incorporate this into your analysis and your business review and all that sort of thing. So I hope that this episode helped you and inspired you to start with GA4 sooner rather than later. If you want me to do more Google Analytics, GA4 trainings, and YouTube videos, please let me know. I love talking about Google Analytics. It works really well with the rest of my search marketing content, but I would love to hear from you. So leave a comment, whether you're on my YouTube channel or you're on my blog, or if you're listening to my podcast, take a screenshot of this episode and tag me, and just say, hey, I want more GA4 content. All right, thank you so much for being here, and I'll catch you next week on the podcast.